Hey everyone, Jack here. Welcome back to the show. Today we're tackling something I think we all struggle with, at least a little bit,
It's a big one, yeah.
self-discipline. But we're going to make it fun, or at least less intimidating, hopefully.
Definitely less intimidating. We're all about making those positive changes feel doable, not overwhelming.
Exactly. And joining us is Elena. She's an expert in, well, human behavior, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
That works. Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about what makes people tick, what helps us change our habits, all that good stuff.
So, perfect person to have on when we're talking about self-discipline, because that's really, at its core, about changing how we behave, right?
Absolutely. It's about making choices that align with our goals, even when those choices aren't the easiest or most immediately gratifying.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, I always tell people, before you can even think about discipline, you got to figure out what you're actually aiming for.
Like, what matters most?
Exactly. It's like that saying, um, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
You got to have that destination in mind.
Right. It's about knowing your main thing. What are those big goals that really light you up?
And how do we figure that out?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I feel like I have a million things I want to do, but
It can be overwhelming, for sure. Instead of trying to do it all, try picking 3 or 4 big goals for the year. That's it.
just 3 or 4.
Yeah, it forces you to prioritize. And here's a little trick I use. Ask yourself, if I only had 2 hours a week for this area of my life, what would I spend it on?
Hmm, that's interesting. It makes you cut through all the noise.
Right. Suddenly it's not about fitting in every little thing, but about what's truly essential.
I think a lot of us get caught up in that trap.
Yeah.
Like, we want to do all the things all the time.
And then we end up feeling burnt out and like we're not making progress on anything.
So knowing your main thing, that's step one. What's next? How do we actually become more disciplined about, well, anything?
This might sound counterintuitive, but lower the bar.
Wait, really? Lower the bar.
Yeah, at least at first. See, a lot of times we get stuck because we aim for perfection. And perfectionism, it can be paralyzing.
Totally get that. I've definitely procrastinated on projects because I was so worried about getting them just right.
Exactly. And that's where lowering the bar comes in. Instead of trying to write the perfect blog post, just start writing. Instead of aiming for a 30-minute workout, start with 5.
Make those tasks feel less daunting.
Right. It's about taking action, even if it's not perfect. There's this scientific model, the Fogg behavior model, also called BAP.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so it basically says that for a behavior to happen, you need motivation, ability, and a prompt.
Motivation being like how much you want to do it.
Exactly. And ability is how easy it is to do. Prompt is just that little trigger to get you started.
So if something is super easy to do, even if our motivation's low, we're more likely to actually do it.
Exactly. It's those tiny actions, those small wins that build momentum over time.
And that's something I think it's really important to emphasize, especially if our listeners are, working on something new, learning a new skill.
Oh, absolutely. You don't become fluent in a language overnight.
No, it's step by step.
It's about celebrating those small victories, like learning a new phrase or being able to hold a simple conversation.
Progress over perfection. Love that.
And it's the same with building self-discipline. It's a process.
So we've got our main thing. We're lowering the bar. What's the next piece of the puzzle?
This one might sound a little out there, but I want you to befriend your lower self.
My lower self. That sounds kind of ominous.
It's not as bad as it sounds. It's basically that part of us that wants instant gratification, that gives in to those impulses that might not align with our long-term goals.
So like staying up late watching TV when I know I should be sleeping.
Exactly. Or hitting that snooze button instead of going for that morning run.
Yeah, I know that voice well.
Instead of fighting it head on, acknowledge it. It's part of you. Imagine it as a separate character, even with its own wants and needs.
So like having a conversation with that part of myself.
Exactly. There's a therapeutic approach called internal family systems that does this. You hear out these different parts of yourself and find a compromise.
So instead of saying no to that extra episode of TV,
Yeah.
I might say, okay, 1 episode, then bed.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, acknowledging your impulses instead of trying to suppress them.
That makes so much sense. So I'm not a bad person for wanting to watch TV. I just need to find a way to manage that desire.
Exactly. It's about being kind to yourself while still working towards your goals.
I like that. Befriending the lower self.
It's less about fighting and more about understanding and working together.
Makes it feel way less daunting. Okay, so what's next on our list for building self-discipline?
This one is all about finding that sweet spot between structure and flexibility.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like I'm either too rigid or too, well, all over the place.
I hear you. A lot of people struggle with that balance. Routines are great, but too much rigidity can backfire.
Yeah, like you miss one day and suddenly the whole thing feels pointless.
Right. Instead of aiming for perfection every day, try going for most days. Like aim to work out 4 days a week instead of every single day.
Makes it feel more sustainable.
Definitely. There's this great rule, the 2-day rule. You might have heard of it.
I think so. Remind me.
Basically, you're never allowed to skip the gym 2 days in a row. You can miss one day, but not two.
So it keeps you from totally falling off track.
Exactly. It's a structure, but it has built-in flexibility. Another thing I like is the idea of ABC goals.
ABC goals, tell me more.
So A is your ideal outcome, B is still good, and C is the bare minimum to keep your streak alive.
Oh, I love that. Like even if I don't hit my A goal, doing something is better than nothing.
Exactly. Prevents that all or nothing thinking that can really sabotage us.
It takes the pressure off.
Exactly. It's about celebrating every step forward.
Okay, so we're finding that balance between structure and flexibility. What's our final tip for building self-discipline?
This one is all about sticking to one system.
Oh, I needed to hear this one. I'm such a sucker for trying new apps and productivity methods.
I get it. There's so much out there. But constantly switching systems actually adds mental friction.
You're spending more time managing the system than actually doing the work.
It's like you're always starting over, never really mastering anything.
So what's the key here?
Find a system that works for you and stick with it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just consistent.
So it's not about chasing the perfect system, it's about finding one that's good enough and actually using it.
You know, Ryan Holiday, the author, he uses a simple note card system for writing, and he's published tons of bestsellers.
Wow, so simple can be effective.
It really can. It's not about the fanciest tools, it's about consistency.
It's about finding a system that lets you do your best work without getting bogged down. So find what works and stick with it.
Exactly. Give it time to see the results. Don't give up too soon.
Great advice. And I think that applies to a lot of things in life, not just productivity systems. We've covered so much today. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, we've talked about knowing your main thing, lowering the bar, befriending your lower self.
Finding that balance between structure and flexibility and sticking to one system. Huge.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new framework for thinking about self-discipline.
It's about making it feel less overwhelming and more about those small, consistent steps.
I already feel a little more motivated, a little less intimidated by the whole idea of self-discipline.
That's what we like to hear. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
And it's a journey we can all take one step at a time.
Exactly.
Thanks for all the insight today, Elena. It's been great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, we'll be right back.
It's kind of like, building a muscle, that self-discipline.
Yeah, I like that.
The more you use it,
the stronger it gets.
Yeah, you got to work it out, make it stronger over time.
And like any workout, probably best not to go too hard too fast.
Yeah. Exactly. You wouldn't start lifting weights by trying to bench press like 300 pounds.
Not unless I wanted to hurt myself, yeah.
Right. You start small, gradually increase the challenge.
Make those small wins, build up to the big stuff.
And be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day,
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So what's something our listeners could do, like today, to start building that self-discipline muscle?
I'd say go back to that main thing we talked about.
That big goal that really matters.
Yeah, write it down. And then think of just one tiny thing you could do today to get a little bit closer.
Doesn't have to be huge, just something to get the ball rolling.
Exactly. It all adds up.
And I think sometimes people get discouraged because they feel like if they can't do it perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all.
Oh, that perfectionism trap.
Yeah, but we're all about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. It's about showing up for yourself, even when it's not perfect.
It's like learning a new language. You wouldn't expect to be fluent right away.
Not at all. It's all those little steps, all those awkward conversations.
And eventually it starts to click.
Exactly. And there will be days when you stumble, you get discouraged.
Totally normal.
But that's part of it.
It's about getting back on track.
Yeah, and remembering why you started in the first place.
That why is so powerful. It's what keeps us going.
Right. Like, how is being more self-disciplined going to make your life better?
What are those benefits you're looking forward to?
Maybe it's achieving a big goal or just feeling more in control.
And it doesn't always have to be a grind, right?
No way. If you're dreading your workouts, find a new activity.
Something you actually enjoy doing.
Yeah, and celebrate those wins no matter how small.
give yourself a little pat on the back. Why not?
Self-discipline isn't about punishment. It's about progress.
And it's a journey. It's not like you reach this end point and you're done.
It's ongoing, right?
Yeah, it's about constantly learning and growing.
And those skills, they pay off in every area of life.
So keep practicing those self-discipline muscles.
You got this.
Absolutely.
Huh?
We believe in you.
And we're here to support you along the way.
That's what this is all about. We've talked about a lot today.
5 big tips for building self-discipline.
Yeah, starting with knowing your main thing.
Figuring out what really matters, yeah.
And then lowering the bar.
Taking the pressure off that perfectionism.
Right, and that idea of, what was it, befriending your lower self?
Accepting those impulses, working with them, not against them.
Makes a huge difference, that mindset shift. And then, of course, the balance between structure and flexibility.
Routines are good, but gotta have some wiggle room.
Exactly. And finally, that reminder to stick to one system.
Find what works and go with it.
So much good stuff packed in there. But I think ultimately it's about remembering that self-discipline, it's not a destination.
It's not like you reach a point and you're done.
Yeah, it's more like a journey, you know?
It's an ongoing process.
And just like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get.
Like, think about riding a bike.
Oh yeah, when you're first starting out, you're wobbly, you fall.
But you keep practicing, you get more confident.
And eventually you're just riding. You don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. It becomes second nature.
It's like that with self-discipline too. Those choices, those habits, they just become part of who you are.
So if our listeners are ready to start that journey, what's one thing they could do today?
I think it goes back to figuring out your why. Like, why do you want to be more disciplined in the first place?
What's driving you? What are those goals you're working towards?
Because when things get tough, and they will, it's that why that keeps you going.
And starting small, setting realistic goals.
Not trying to change everything overnight,
Be patient with yourself. It's a process.
but it's so worth it.
The benefits of self-discipline, they show up in every area of life.
You feel more in control, more capable.
You achieve those big goals. You build that life you want.
So keep practicing, keep learning, keep growing.
And don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
We're all in this together, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep those self-discipline muscles working.
And we'll see you next time.